Hello and welcome to the Gorilla Guide webinar to securing cloud environments. Thank you so much for joining this special Gorilla Guide webisode, as we like to call them. This is going to be a fun Friday event. On this event, you'll learn from our experts at Nutanix, Palo Alto Networks, Rubric, Thycotic Centrify, Phoenix Nap, and Security Scorecard. Now, before we get started, you should know that this webisode is based on the hugely popular Gorilla Guide educational book series. These are all free, easy to read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. You can download and subscribe to the entire book series over at gorilla.guide. It's a great way to stay up to date on enterprise technology. You can even download the Gorilla Guide and read it on your iPad or Kindle. Now, on this Gorilla Guide webisode, we're going to have some awesome prizes. I'll talk about those in just a moment. We do encourage your questions. We want this to be an educational event, and we will be asking you some poll questions during the webisode today. So we appreciate your participation in those. We encourage, of course, you to socialize the event. I'll talk about the social angle to this in just a moment, but I do want to encourage you to check out the resources that are available for download there in your handouts tab. As I mentioned, we do have some great prizes. We have 3 Amazon $100 gift cards. You must be live in attendance to qualify. We will be announcing the prize winners here live on the event. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and you can find the prize terms and conditions there in your handouts tab. If you win a prize and you'd like to donate the prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. We've partnered with the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund and One Tree Planted if you'd like to make a charitable donation. The hashtag for this event over on Twitter is Gorilla Guide. We would appreciate your help in socializing what we do here at Actual Tech Media. You can always follow Actual Tech Media at Actual Tech Media on Twitter, and me, your moderator, David M. Davis. You can subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel over on LinkedIn, where we talk about the Gorilla Guide book series and all of our upcoming events. And I encourage you to check out the new Inside the Guide Gorilla Guide podcast. We've got 3 episodes out there so far in the iTunes podcast store or wherever you find your podcasts, and it's a great way to stay up to date on enterprise technology in a different and fun-filled format. Now, before we get started, let's talk about some considerations for securing cloud environments. And I'm excited now to bring in Mr. Scott Becker, a fellow moderator here at Actual Tech Media. You there, Scott?
Hey, I'm happy to be here, David. Thanks for having me. And I'm happy to talk about securing cloud environments. So let me hit you with the stat right away. So cybercrime is expected to cost the world $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. What do you make of that?
That's, an incredible number, a trillion with a T. And if I think about the GDP of the United States, of course, I happen to have this stat in my head. $21.5 trillion is the GDP of the United States. So cybercrime around the world in 2025 is going to cost roughly 1/4 of the world economy. That's an incredible number, just being eaten up by crime. And that number is up from 3 trillion back in 2015. So this is rapidly increasing. And let me hit you with another stat here. 40% more attacks are happening weekly on organizations in 2021 compared to just last year, just back in 2020. That's according to Checkpoint Security. What do you think about that one, Scott?
That is shocking. I expect, some increase, but it would have seemed like the big increase would have been at the beginning of 2020 when, there was all the, newly at home remote workers, in sort of a new attack surface. But, that it's gone that up from 2020 to 2021 is just amazing.
It is. It's like the attackers have used the 2020 pandemic as a springboard for activity in 2021 to be even more. So, for anyone out there who's responsible for your company's data and for securing your company's network, it's really a frightening time when it comes to security. Ransomware and phishing are just a constant threat. So, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just move everything to the cloud, Scott? What do you think? Is that going to fix it all?
Absolutely not. I think there are certainly ways to, protect cloud and be smart about going to cloud, but cloud does, sort of increase your attack surface. It makes your attack surface much larger. It eliminates your network perimeters in a lot of ways. So, a lot of considerations when it comes to security in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some really intelligent, really innovative cloud solutions that we're going to learn about on the event today. But simply by moving things to the cloud, it really doesn't fix everything. I mean, we're constantly being asked to do more with less in IT. We need smarter, more efficient, better security solutions to make our jobs easier. And that's something that you'll be learning about on today's webisode. And I think this is a good opportunity to just step back for a second and think about our company's security posture. How confident are you in your company's security posture? I mean, I went through and I just made kind of a list here of things that, as an IT person, no matter what role you have, I mean, you're responsible for ensuring user accounts are secure, educating your users on security best practices. They're the first line of defense, really, making sure your applications and data are protected, and making sure that data is quickly recoverable in the event of a ransomware attack, protecting the network with strong security inside, outside, over in the cloud too, and guaranteeing fast recovery if there is some sort of disaster. It's a long list, and I'm sure it's not complete. What am I missing, Scott?
David, this is an excellent list. I think it's pretty comprehensive. Just the one thing that I would add, you've got to keep user experience in mind. No matter how good your controls are, your security controls, if your users don't feel productive, if they feel constrained by security measures in how they're getting their work done, they're going to circumvent your best efforts. So you've really got to remember that the whole point of the computing organization, or the computing infrastructure, is to get work done, and the security has to take into account what the users need to do.
Yeah, great point. Users, we got to keep them happy. We got to keep their apps running, but we also have to keep them secure at the same time. So security needs to be efficient. It needs to be effectively transparent to some degree to them and to their work processes. So we've got some really cool solutions lined up to learn about today. Nutanix, Palo Alto Networks, Rubrik, Thycotic, Centrify, Phoenix Nap, and Security Scorecard.
Hey, David, we got to get this started. Let's roll on. So our first presentation is from Nutanix and Palo Alto Networks. We have Stephen Riley. He's Partner Engineer Lead for Technology Partnerships at Palo Alto Networks. Stephen, take it away.
Stephen Riley. I'm a lead solution engineer inside of Palo Alto Networks, and I'm here today to talk to you about hyper-converged and hybrid multi-cloud environments, leveraging our VM series virtual firewalls. And what we want to do, or what I want to do, is cover the story of hyper-converged environments and where we've come from and where we're going to. And this is in relation to Nutanix and our integration with Nutanix. So if we look at a typical data center, we can see that workloads are essentially across the entire data center and the infrastructure there. And over time, we've moved from these large environments with lots and lots of pieces of hardware and quite an unmanageable solution to more of a hyper-converged infrastructure, which provides for the ability to deploy and deploy apps in more of a virtual environment. And with that too, we've seen that hybrid cloud environments are starting to take place as well and move very rapidly into our environments over the last few years. And so these environments that are hyper-converged and merging cloud have really changed the way in which we work and operate. And if we look at an example hyper-converged infrastructure without cloud components, we know that we're leveraging the servers, storage networks, and storage systems. And Nutanix is really key to that in terms of simplifying and managing the way in which you deploy, the way in which you manage your workflows or work spaces inside those environments. And Palo Alto really works closely with Nutanix in terms of deploying and managing our infrastructure inside these environments from a VM series perspective, our VM series firewall. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we need to do that. Let's cover first, the interconnectivity and lack of visibility within inside of these environments. So in a traditional data center, you'll typically have just a north-south type visibility from a firewall perspective. And those particular infrastructures are pretty simplistic, but we know over time they've become more complex as we've seen them move to software-defined data centers, where you have more of a one device manages several pieces of infrastructure, and then we further complicate that by plugging in, for example, a hybrid cloud infrastructure as well. And so how do we actually manage that infrastructure and ensure that traffic is going where traffic needs to go, and also understand what's in that traffic? So we're talking about network traffic inspection. And to do this, we know that typically a lot of the networks out there are very flat, and traffic generally flows east to west as it goes through these particular infrastructures. It's a very flat network because it's much easier to manage that way, as opposed to the typical star topology in the old days where we just had a simple data center. And hackers know this and exploit this particular type of infrastructure from that perspective because it is so flat. And how do they do that? Well, really what they're looking for is an external attacker is looking for some form of beachhead. And how do they do that today? Much of it is done through that particular attacker coming in through some form of a social attack, an email thread that contains some malware that a user would typically click on unbeknownst to them and install software on the local machine. This enables an external attacker to penetrate the network and create what they call a beachhead. In other words, a location from them to start penetrating and looking at your network. And as they do this, they're doing this through command and control servers that are based out there on the internet. And these actually help them control what their software is doing. And the first thing they're going to do is usually some sort of port scan to see other vulnerabilities inside your infrastructure. And this is generally a lateral move, the east-west traffic type of movement inside your organization. So it's very difficult if you do not have any sort of monitoring to identify and see what's going on from a flow perspective. We know that on average, attackers are inside your environment without you knowing for at least 280 days. This gives them enough time to do reconnaissance, understand your assets, understand your infrastructure, what pieces of information are important, and then actually make the attack. So once the attack happens, it usually happens very rapidly. Within minutes, they're pulling data and pulling information from your environment and doing some form of either data exfiltration, or what's happened these days is some sort of ransomware where we're locking down the environment and they're seeking money. So these sort of things happen very rapidly inside an environment. So with Nutanix and Nutanix Flow, we have the ability to really work together and provide a better visualization of the environment, so that, and this is on the Nutanix side, so you can understand applications, how they connect to each other, and then apply policies in a simplistic way without really needing to understand a whole bunch of networking. So this integrated threat prevention really helps you understand what's going on inside your environment. And this is a typical or a very simplistic viewpoint from AHV deployment with Flow enabled. The VMs are basically behaving like the VM series firewalls are behaving like a bump in the wire in this particular scenario, where we've segregated through policy on the firewalls, these networks or these systems, so that we can apply the appropriate policies that we need to from a firewall perspective, gain that visibility and control it. Now, with a hyperconverged and VPC infrastructure, and I want to talk to this a little bit more, virtual private clouds and Nutanix new virtual private cloud environment actually enables us from a firewall perspective to have several other options. And so I want to go through some architectural discussions here and look at some of the slides, well, some of the options we have now in terms of leveraging Nutanix and the type of deployments you can have from an IT perspective inside these infrastructures to help manage and monitor traffic to ensure that you are secure. So at the moment, there is, at a high level, if we look at the integration with the way in which we deploy and manage, I just wanted to point out that it's very simplistic. There is an automation orchestration tool that we can use from Nutanix. Leveraging COM, we can actually deploy firewalls directly into your infrastructure and then provide security to ensure that information is flowing back into your firewall environment, and you can manage all this through Panorama, so another console that manages just your security infrastructure, and that combined with Flow inside of Nutanix, locking down the environment, ensuring that you can see context-based information and firewall policies applied to that information across the board, you suddenly have complete visibility and a simplistic way of managing and monitoring your infrastructure. Inside of these infrastructures, there's multiple ways to look at it. We have a simple deployment where you have inline service chains, and this is where I was talking about the bump in the wire. So for every VM, we can have an east-west firewall VM series from Palo Alto Networks looking at and monitoring traffic and really determining, in this example, I'm looking at the HR traffic, inbound and outbound traffic, what's actually happening, is there any threats that are going on, etc., inside that environment. And again, remember, we can lock these down through Flow, and this is an example of ensuring that this traffic is segregated. So the mail VM and the HR VM, as you can see, there can be segregated to separate places, and this is how we, set up our security chain to ensure that only certain activity can happen across certain protocols and ports. And then Firewall VM series option with Flow networking and VPC. VPC is a fairly new product from Nutanix, but the VM series actually plays very ticely in this particular infrastructure. It's more simplistic. You don't need as many firewalls. We support HA in this. There are fewer resources than a per node surface. So typically in our other integrations, when we're talking about east-west traffic, we might be looking at traffic across your entire infrastructure inside your data center. It's important to have visibility in that east-west traffic. But when we connect via VPC, or you're connecting multiple VPCs, then we can set up a transit network from a firewall perspective, which enables you to monitor more simplistically across large infrastructures. And it can scale up and scale down very rapidly. And Nutanix does that too from their infrastructure and connectivity perspective. And as you can see, we're looking at DPI only between subnets or specific subnets. There's no bump in the wire in this particular case. And we've got Flow enabled in here. So we know that traffic is flowing with purpose to a specific location. And that could add a little bit of complexity in terms of you building out the infrastructure. But the point is, you often need to ensure that we have those security features in place. So Palo Alto Networks can insert their VM series into this infrastructure. Nearly every major cloud environment, such as Azure, AWS, GCP, they all have the ability to deploy VM series in the cloud. And that helps you with connectivity inside this infrastructure and building out these transit security features that you need to assist with your hybrid multi-cloud environments working with Nutanix. And that's our coverage today. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a quick overview. Quickly went into some infrastructure options there with Nutanix, and hopefully you found that useful. Thank you very much.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. Really interesting information there from Nutanix Palo Alto. We've got a poll up here for you for any additional information you'd like about their solution. So I'm just going to leave that up there for a minute. Really interesting stuff about firewalls and you know, the way that they're working in virtual environments. Really scary information about dwell time as well. You know, how long hackers tend to hang around in the network. It just that's always an alarming thing to be reminded of. So we'll give this just a few more seconds. Go ahead and put in your entry there. And while you know, if you've already answered the poll, just a reminder of all the handouts that are in your console there. We've got links for each of the companies that are presenting today. So be sure to check those out. All right. Well, thank you for filling in that poll, everyone. And now we're going to move on. Our next presenter is Kim Lambert from Rubric. Kim is the Principal Product Marketing Manager at Rubric. And take it away, Kim.
Thanks so much. So welcome everyone. I'm Kim Lambert from the product marketing team at Rubric, where I focus on how Rubric secures your data in the cloud. So today I'm going to talk through some key challenges you may face with data protection in the cloud. I'll also talk about how Rubric has built a zero trust data security platform from the ground up to provide you with security at the point of data for business continuity, for cloud acceleration, for cyber resilience. And by the way, that's what we do at Rubric. We protect your critical data and applications from ransomware and operational failures, and we do that with an immutable data backup and recovery platform. Now, let me start by setting the stage with what many customers we talk to are trying to address as part of their enterprise security initiatives. So the first, quite fitting for today, is figuring out, how do I solve for cloud? We find that enterprises are trying to solve for data security in a hybrid architecture. They're adopting new cloud platforms. They're tackling using multi-cloud, and they want their data management and data security to support them and scale as they go. Now, customers are also trying to make it easier to run their digital estate. So infrastructure automation at scale, that's key for doing public cloud right. So your data management solution must be easy to automate and integrate into your environment. And then, of course, there's tackling security risk. So data security, being able to recover from ransomware, plus data governance, that's top of mind for everybody right now. Any data management solution would be incomplete if it didn't provide recovery capabilities for cyber attacks. So we're going to address here solving for cloud data protection, of course. And one of those challenges for cloud involves overcoming legacy data backup and recovery. So what is it about legacy that makes it a poor fit for cloud workloads and expanding cloud adoption? Well, the legacy operating model or legacy technologies and tooling that you maybe use, they have shortcomings when you try to apply them to the cloud. After all, the cloud, it's about elasticity, being dynamic, being responsive, highly automated. But with legacy, there's not only complexity on the front end to deploying and configuring, with maybe even hundreds or thousands of backup jobs to maintain. But even more important, legacy systems can suffer from slow, inconsistent recovery. They also do poorly in hybrid environments where you have on-prem as well as cloud architectures, maybe multi-cloud. So it can end up costing you a lot of money as well. There's the capital outlay to maintain and upgrade hardware, the cost and expertise to manage all those backup jobs, and then the cost of downtime and even missing recovery SLA windows. Another problem that comes into play actually has to do with the shared responsibility model. So whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, SaaS apps, for all of these, there's actually consensus among the public cloud vendors that data protection is something that you need to consider as consumers of these platforms. And the responsibility of data protection lies on you, the customer. So this can become especially tricky if you're hybrid, if you're multi-cloud, or operating at an enormous scale. However, we at Rubric help customers solve for cloud scale while making sure their data is protected. So our platform can tie in regardless of where your organization is in its cloud journey, whether you're 90% on-prem and have a deadline to be in the cloud in the next year, or you're born in cloud and you're building all your applications there and want to know how you can apply security and governance. Rubric is designed to run anywhere. So you may have heard of Rubric already, but back since 2014, Rubrik set out to really transform legacy backup with a single software to run on anything, to consolidate and simplify data management with a secure backup and recovery solution. So that's number one, built to support all enterprise applications. Two, built with cloud in mind as well. And I'll talk to you about how natively our software is built to integrate with the cloud in a few areas. So we can dynamically move data to the cloud, spin things up in the cloud for instant recovery, take a VM, archive it to the cloud, easily provision and automate SLAs to protect cloud native workloads. And we support all the major cloud players out there. Microsoft has even recognized Rubrik's leadership position in the data security space and has made an equity investment in Rubrik to drive new integrations and solutions to market, and also to accelerate our solution, which is actually based on Azure, to help customers solve ransomware pains and protect their data in Azure as well as Microsoft 365, of course. Now, as for the Rubrik platform, it's built with an API-first approach in terms of automation, and I'll touch more on that next. But the file system that underpins our platform is natively immutable out of the box. We combine that immutable file system with a zero trust design, which operations can only be performed through authenticated APIs. So once data is written at a code level, it can't be read, modified, or deleted. So this gives you a baseline defense against ransomware. And what you're really looking to do, of course, is to be able to quickly recover and restore business operations. So in the event of a cyber attack or accidental deletion, data corruption, keeping your data available, keeping your organization running. And for that, Rubrik provides not only a scalable data management platform that eliminates operational complexity that comes with legacy, but it's built with security in mind. So that same file system, it indexes, categorizes metadata when backups happen. And since we have that metadata footprint, we can look at the data intrinsically. We can derive additional value from the backup beyond just this backup as an insurance policy. So we've built and launched apps for our platform that do things like ransomware investigation, looking at data and metadata change rates to see if a ransomware attack has occurred, the ability to roll back and then forensically identify how widespread the attack was. We've also built data classification and sensitive data discovery that, again, look at backup metadata that can tell you where things like PII or HIPAA data live within your estate as part of mitigating data risk. Now, before we go into the cloud pieces, I'll say this about API first. So everything at Rubrik beginning with an API is powerful because it's simple to automate with a number of third-party tools. So we have our own repositories on GitHub. We have rubric.build.com where we have these codes pre-built and canned for you to be able to deliver things like self-service through a ServiceNow catalog or advanced monitoring analytics with Splunk. But the idea is you can manage Rubrik through the API through code just as simply as you can through the Rubrik interface. So most organizations we work with have an automation strategy, and they like that Rubrik can tie in simply. Terraform's a big one in particular. We have a dedicated Terraform provider that can provision things up and down as cloud workloads are built and destroyed. Now for the cloud, 3 key functions you get with Rubrik. So first, the ability to archive to lower cost long-term cloud storage. Second, the ability to launch existing apps in the cloud, so accelerating that move from on-prem with instantiation of VMs and apps. And then finally, here on the right, helping customers protect new cloud-native applications across clouds. So let's take a bit of a look at these. For archival, most customers, if they have an on-prem data center, they've replaced legacy with Rubric, they'll take an archive of their data backup, send it to public cloud, maybe an AWS S3 bucket, Azure Blob Storage. The technology does incremental forever in the archive, so it's efficient with how we're placing the data in the cloud bucket. And we can do other things like cost tiering within these cloud buckets where we can optimize costs. We can also automate that life cycle of how the data tiers, when it tiers, based on policies and storage class. So that's all controlled within an SLA domain to dictate when and where you want data archived. Because again, all the metadata, it's indexed, it's searchable. And if you need to go pull it out of the archive, you can retrieve single files actually without pulling the whole VM back. So if you had an archive living in S3 and frequent access bucket, but maybe there's one document you've been asked to pull from 3 months back. It's no longer in production, it's in a backup, but it's in the cloud now. So with Rubric, you can go back, you can pluck out that single file, bring it back without having to bring back the whole VM or the whole file share. So it's highly cost effective. And then we also, of course, encrypt and provide immutable copies to safeguard against ransomware. And we can tier data to cloud for long-term retention to any of the cloud providers as well as on-prem. So if you have NFS storage or S3 storage that you want to archive to, you can do that as well. So that's archival. For cloud instantiation, say you've archived data to an S3 bucket. What Rubric allows you to do is take that data in the archive, instantiate it to run in an EC2 instance. And when our software handles the conversion process from, say, a VMDK to an Amazon machine image, or from a VMDK to a VHD in Azure, and lowers the RPOs, those recovery point objectives, significantly by automating that conversion. So there's several important things you can do here. So if you have an app that's mission critical, it goes down in your data center, you want to now launch it in the cloud so you don't lose any time to business outage, you can do that in just a couple minutes with Rubric. Another use case, test dev. So maybe you want to take VMs in your data center, use Rubric as the mechanism to migrate them to cloud, spin them up there so you can run testing. And then once your data is safe and secure in the cloud, Rubric can even act as a component of your DR, your disaster recovery to the cloud strategy. So using data in the archive, this can allow Rubric Rubric customers to lift and shift VMs into AWS or Azure automatically as part of policy or on demand through the UI or API. And you can do migration instantiation in bulk. So we've had customers that have migrated thousands of VMs within just 24 hours. So if you're building out your cloud strategy, you can use this as part of the migration path to the cloud. Last up, cloud native protection. This is a SaaS-based snapshotting tool. What this software is used for is to protect workloads that are IaaS or platform as a service in the cloud, PaaS. Because some customers, after they've lifted and shifted, they've built things cloud native, they want to make sure they can provide that same level of governance security to the cloud as they have on-prem. So first of all, for this capability, it's SaaS. From a configuration perspective, there's no running resources or anything like that in your cloud account. We're just connecting via API, which is an aggregation of metadata. And it's a control plane. So we connect from that control plane via API to your cloud account. And we've implemented this for customers where the software, it's up and running, it's doing backups in just 5 minutes. Now, for scalable protection, we offer this ability to create a policy that spans hundreds of thousands of resources in the cloud. So just saying what kind of RPO, what RTO you want, type that in. You could say, I want to be able to back up all my cloud resources, whether it's RDS workloads, EC2 once a day. I want to retain that data maybe for 15 days. And then after that, archive it somewhere else. So you set that policy up, the software handles the entire backup and recovery. We take all that manual work out of having to configure all these different components in the cloud. And 90% of people we talk to tell us that their cloud teams, they're launching, they're building things in the cloud fast. It's challenging to get this baseline backup and to be able to prove that to both themselves and to internal and external stakeholders that they're protected. So we're able to give you that baseline. From a recovery standpoint, it's near zero RTOs, just several clicks to recover. You can recover across region and across account in the cloud, everything searchable. In terms of security, the snapshots we take themselves are immutable, meaning they can't be altered, they can't be encrypted by ransomware. And then from a usability standpoint, we purposely developed a bifurcated approach. So we have a point and click multi-cloud dashboard experience that the operator can go into, derive reporting from, have visibility in a way that native tooling from a cloud provider just can't do across different clouds. And then for DevOps, we have the ability to deploy this as code with a dedicated Terraform provider like we talked about earlier. So that's cloud native. To wrap up, we talked about the ability to archive to the cloud. We talked about instantiation, launch on cloud, and then we talked about how to protect data that's living in IaaS or PaaS. So we believe we have one of the most elegant solutions out there from the cloud perspective, single command center, regardless of where your data lives or where it's going. And this is really powerful in terms of visibility and control, being able to secure your environment holistically against data loss. We'd love to help you secure your critical data from ransomware and other data loss scenarios. Contact us at sales@rubrik.com. We have a lot of resources you can reference in the meantime, technical white papers focused on the major public cloud providers.
All right, great. So we have another poll up about what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution. Choices here: data sheet, technical white paper, customer case study, pricing details, personal demo, like to try for myself, already a customer. So go ahead and click on that when you get a chance here. Just like to say that was a really interesting presentation from Rubrik. I mean, I always like to have the reminders about the shared responsibility model that a lot of the cloud providers have. I don't think you could sort of see that diagram too many times. It's so valuable, and it is so similar among the vendors. Nice description too of the overview of Rubrik there with the 3-part solutions. With cloud archive, cloud migration, and cloud native protection. Okay, so I think we will move ahead. Thanks everybody for clicking on your poll choices here. And our next speaker is from Thycotic. It's Tony Golding, who is a cybersecurity evangelist with Thycotic. So let's hear from Tony.
Thanks very much indeed for sharing your valuable time with me today. My name is Tony. I'm a cybersecurity evangelist with Thycotic Centrify, and I'm going to talk to you today about PAM to secure cloud environments. Now, it's quite a lot to get through, so I'll do my best to cover the essentials so that you walk away with a better understanding of this and why it's important. So let's begin by looking at the situation that organizations find themselves in, and why should we even care about PAM? Well, to help answer that, let's look at a few stats. Now, as the slide says, today's security is not secure, and that's quite the provocative statement. But we're told by industry analysts such as Gartner that despite almost $145 billion being spent this year on IT security, 2/3 of organizations worldwide are still being breached. And worse, they're being breached on average 5 times in a 12-month period. So today's security is not secure. Something has to change. Now, as we all know, cyber criminals have a lot of tools and approaches at their disposal when it comes to data breaches. But as you can see from these stats, 70 to 80% of breaches involve compromised privileged credentials. So while cyber criminals have a smorgasbord, evidence shows that they work really hard to obtain privileged credentials, elevated privileges, the proverbial keys to the kingdom, because that's what allows them to gain access to the network, to move laterally from server to server, hunting down sensitive assets that they can exfiltrate and monetize or encrypt and hold for ransom. So has the cloud really changed things? Yep, you bet it has. Just look at all these moving parts on the slide. And the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all this, with many organizations accelerating their plans. Spending on cloud infrastructure services like AWS and Microsoft Azure is expected to grow from $50 billion this year to $74 billion through 2022, according to Gartner. However, when organizations expand their technology stack and they store an endless amount of sensitive data in the cloud, that leads not only to complexity, but also security challenges. And many organizations are not only in a single platform like AWS, they're standing up workloads in multiple platforms. Now, doing this may be appropriate for their business, but it has massive security ramifications, again increasing their overall complexity and their attack surface. And cybercriminals are taking advantage of this. But they no longer bulldoze the front door, guns blazing, setting off alarms. Cybercrime is a big business. It's orchestrated and carefully planned. And there's really no front door anymore. That castle and moat analogy is dead. Today, with IT infrastructure and workloads spread to the four winds, on premises, in the cloud, or even multi-cloud, security teams are struggling to get to grips with and to define a defensible perimeter around all of this, wherever it lives. And along with it, the concept of people on the inside are implicitly trusted and people on the outside are a threat. That's no longer a sound basis for access control decisions. There is no inside and outside in the traditional sense. So just as hackers have evolved their methodologies to exploit all of this, we must also change the way we look at security, both consumers of this security and the vendors such as Thycotic Centrify who develop PAM solutions. Now, given the limited budget IT can spend on security solutions, and given the earlier stats that traditional security approaches are not doing the job, the best bang for the IT buck is to focus on an identity-centric security model. Further, one that's founded on security principles that take modern cloud architectures and use cases into consideration. So let's talk about that for the rest of this prezo. I want to begin by correcting a possible misconception that you may have about what PAM is. I've worked with many organizations who have embarked on their PAM journey only to fail because they haven't properly understood the key moving parts to PAM, both of which are critical to resolve the challenges that we've been talking about. Now, in a nutshell, they've invested in one side of the PAM coin but not the other, which frankly doesn't go far enough. So think of PAM as a two-sided coin. On one side is vaulting, and on the other side is privilege elevation. Now, of the two, vaulting is the easiest to wrap our heads around, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that concept. But to ensure we're all on the same page, think of a password vault like a secure database to store those keys to the kingdom account passwords instead of implicitly trusting administrators with them. And it does a few other things as well, but securely managing those accounts and their passwords is the primary function. Now, in a perfect world, we would eliminate all shared privileged accounts like root and administrator, but we can't get rid of them all, so the vault becomes a place to securely store them and control access to them. So vaulting is a critical part of the PAM equation, and it's often the first thing organizations deploy because it's relatively simple, especially if you subscribe to a proper multi-tenant SaaS vault. Plus, it can help when the auditor tells you that you're not protecting access to shared privileged accounts properly. So a SaaS vault can help you quickly respond to that and to get the audit finding removed. However, vaulting alone is not enough, and certainly for any of you out there with an agenda to deploy a least privilege approach to PAM, for example, a zero trust or a zero standing privileges model, then you need the other half of the PAM coin to complement the vault. Privilege elevation, based on the principle of least privilege, is that other half. Administrators use their personal enterprise account full-time. That account has zero administrative rights, but they use it for email, web surfing, etc. But that puts them in a quandary, right? If their super user accounts have been taken away and secured in a vault, which was that first side of the PAM coin, how can they do their job? Privilege elevation allows the administrator to elevate privileges to perform legitimate privileged tasks. Now, I say legitimate privileged tasks because best practice is that we don't just hand over the extra rights when the user asks for them. We verify the request. So we provide the users with self-service workflows for just-in-time privilege elevation. They request what they need, typically on the back of a help desk ticket. One or more approvers then grants or denies the request, using context to help make an informed decision. And if granted, they get the rights they need for a limited time, so there's no standing privileges. They use those rights to log into a system, to run privileged applications, or a set of privileged commands, and they get the job done. Then at the expiry time, the PAM solution automatically revokes those rights, so they're back down to a least privileged state. So in this way, by combining vaulting and privilege elevation, the two sides of the PAM coin, the old security tenet of trust but verify can now become never trust, always verify. And this modern approach to PAM enables IT and IT security to better protect access to critical systems and data, and it also aligns with modern best practices such as zero trust and zero standing privileges. Now, as discussed, PAM is an identity-based approach to securing access and privilege. But given our hybrid infrastructure resulting from migration of workloads to the cloud, we need a modern PAM that can react to this and the new ways that cyber criminals are taking advantage. And that begins with a PAM platform, a multi-tenant SaaS service, so its services are shared and accessible from anywhere. So whether it's human admins, internal IT or outsourced third parties, for example, who need to access vaulted credentials and to remotely log into servers, or whether it's applications and microservices that need to obtain vaulted secrets and ephemeral tokens such as OAuth for app-to-app federated authentication in a DevOps world. This modern SaaS platform can grow and scale to accommodate, and it brings huge efficiencies by avoiding code replication and inconsistencies. Now, given that today's modern enterprise is a hybrid, a hub and spoke model is essential to ensure that these distributed private clouds can all talk to the platform. So when you add new infrastructure, lightweight spokes allow that environment to preserve its private nature, but to reach back to the platform for centralized PAM policies and to access its shared services. Adding new ones becomes trivial. Just add a new spoke, enroll it in the platform to establish a trust relationship, and you're off to the races. This also applies to any legacy infrastructure on premises, including your enterprise directories such as Active Directory or OpenLDAP, or more modern cloud directories such as Google Cloud Directory, Okta Directory, Azure AD, Ping, etc. And when it comes to your admins logging into these systems, the hub acts as an identity broker so that your users can log in with their enterprise credentials wherever that enterprise directory lives, without having to replicate directory infrastructure. And this is powerful, and as a result, it avoids identity and password sprawl, it reduces complexity, and it satisfies least privilege and zero trust principles. In the context of cloud migration, this is especially beneficial as it provides the flexibility to support infrastructure in multiple clouds through a common PAM architecture. Now, this is all great for vaulting, one side of the PAM coin, but it also tees up the other side, which is privilege elevation. Host-based client technology is a critical element, without which it would be extremely challenging to satisfy requirements for least privileged access at the server and zero trust. These clients establish a root of trust between the host system and your source of truth for PAM policies. And this is important because you want to ensure that the PAM policies being enforced by the client on the host systems are trusted and not from a rogue system trying to backdoor into your servers. Trying to do all of this with legacy solutions designed for the data center, that would be a huge struggle. It would be very resource intensive and likely result in security gaps that increase your risk and delay your cloud transformation projects. So hopefully you got some value out of this and a better understanding of how a modern PAM solution can help protect cloud infrastructure.
Great, thanks, Tony. So we've got the poll up here. What additional information would you like about the Thycotic Centrify solution? And while I leave that up there for a second for you to enter your answer in there, I just wanted to mention, Simon Young in the audience, you'd flagged a stat that David and I discussed at the top of the session about the 40% increase in attacks from 2020 to 2021. And your question was, how effective are the defenses? And just wanted to make sure everybody heard Tony had an answer in his presentation there. And he said that 2/3 of organizations were being breached. So 67% being hit, and many of those multiple times. So that's one answer to that question is things could be a lot more effective in terms of security defenses. Okay, well, I think that's it's enough time for this poll. Thanks for entering your answers there, and we will move forward. So our next presentation comes from Phoenix Knapp, and I'm pleased to welcome back William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products. Take it away, William.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Actual Tech Media Gorilla Guide Webisode. Today, we've got a great presentation entitled Securing Cloud Environments My name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products at PhoenixNAP, and hopefully by the end of this webisode, you're going to have some new tools in your tool belt to help you understand how you can take a proactive approach to securing your public and private cloud environments. For those of you that don't know much about PhoenixNAP, we've been doing this infrastructure thing for a long time. We started in 2010. We built our first data center operations in Phoenix, Arizona. And over the last 10 and 11 years, we've been expanding our infrastructure platform across the globe and collaborating with some of the best technology leaders in the industry. As you can see, today we have 17 world-class data centers, 11 global network POPs, and we have points of presence in 5 different continents. We're driving massive infrastructure as a service expansion for businesses, and we're helping small businesses understand how they can adopt public cloud in a more secure way. So ultimately, why are you here? Why are you listening to this webisode? And the thing you know is that as you adopt cloud infrastructure, cloud platforms, the cyber crime, ransomware, malware, etc., is moving with you, and they're taking advantage of a lot of the issues that arise from adoption of cloud computing technologies. It's not to say that the public cloud or hybrid cloud is inherently insecure. That's not it at all. It's just complex, and complexity can lead to a lot of issues. And Verizon says that 73% of cybersecurity incidents involve some type of external cloud asset compared to basically 30% a year before. And finally, surpassing the number of on-prem incidents. That's crazy, right? So like, you know now where you need to put your time and effort and focus. And what we're seeing is that as people adopt cloud in a more holistic fashion, you're getting to a point where the criminals are focusing on these platforms and trying to find the errors, right? Most of the things that happen in public cloud, in any type of security vulnerability issue, is some type of human error, whether it's phishing and somebody clicking on a link they shouldn't, or some type of business asset or data set that's stuck somewhere where it shouldn't be, right? It's not to say that you're not doing a lot about security. Internally, you probably are doing everything you can, but it's the things you can't see and you can't control that really hurt you. And so ultimately, we're spending more in cloud, we're spending more in cloud security, and we're still behind the 8 ball when it comes to protecting ourselves from the cyber criminals of the future. Ultimately, when you look at security, I think everyone could agree that there is some type of concern around public cloud security. Some people misattribute that to being cloud is insecure, and that, like I said, that's probably not the case. It's just more that there are inherent cloud issues, right? The proliferation of services, the ability for you to quickly and easily spin up infrastructure, and maybe to some extent bypass governance and compliance and other things, is putting you in a situation, your business in a situation where you find that there are major public cloud adoption security risks. And I think the best part of this slide is that only 57% of the respondents of this survey said that they plan to increase their security budget to deal with these problems. So reading the tea leaves, I think it's only going to get worse from here. Hopefully we can kind of come together as an industry and find our way out of this, but we certainly have a long road to hoe. So let's get into what we think are the biggest issues in cloud security for 2021. I mentioned this earlier. Security and governance and compliance. People that are dealing with highly sensitive data are trying to, collaborate with the needs of the developer and the business unit that wants to go as fast as possible. And that's leading to compromises internally that result in compromises externally. And all this is being truly made worse by the complexities of cloud adoption and the the difficulty in transforming your security posture from an on-prem posture to a public cloud adoption posture. And I think we're going to have some solutions to address that, but ultimately those complexities and cloud configuration issues, they lead to big problems. And then finding the right people and retaining the right skills, makes it just so much harder for organizations, because they can't get the right people to help them make the changes that they might want to make. And so when you're looking at what you can do to secure your cloud environment, you need to prepare. Everything at the top of this list is all about preparation. Most of the list is about preparation, right? You have to ensure that you're taking the right steps to protect your organization. That is planning offline, right? In terms of writing documents and procedures and having those policies that help govern your organization, to the technical controls like multi-factor authentication and backups and vulnerability scans and network segmentation. You have to bundle all this together into a solid disaster recovery and incident response plan, and find a way to get reasonable measures to protect your business. And so what can those look like, right? For people, specifically people that are not all in on public cloud, the hyperscalers and the PaaS platforms that they produce, are there ways to consume cloud infrastructure that are more similar to the environment that you might have on-prem? The answer to that is absolutely. And for the last 5 years, Phoenix Snap has been building one of the world's most secure cloud infrastructure, starting from the ground up, to ensure that as you adopt cloud, you up your security posture, right? Taking your applications, your frameworks, the way that you operate as a business, and bringing those constructs into a cloud environment. That is possible today, right? Through our partnership with technology providers like Veeam and VMware, we're able to give you an actual migration point that can uplift your business and prevent you from having to take inordinate measures to transform all of your applications. If you want to build new modern microservices applications and you think the public cloud is the best place for that, that's okay. You can do that. You can work with that and some type of traditional cloud environment. But ultimately, one of the worst things that you can do is lift and shift traditional applications to the public cloud. It creates security issues, it creates cost issues, can be a nightmare, right? And so when you look at technologies like our data security cloud environment, you get compliance from the infrastructure built in. You get integrated backups built in. You get endpoint protection built in. You get all of these things and a bevy of other upgrade options that can allow you to really secure your cloud adoption. So I mentioned secure by design, really low overhead, super quick time to value, right? You can make these migrations in days and sometimes weeks, not months or years, right? And you can leverage all of the experience that we've amassed inside of our organization to help you, not replace you, help you adopt cloud in a secure way that's going to be material to your business and your business agility. So our friends at Veeam are a huge component to these solutions, right? In data security cloud, how do we replicate VMs? How do we back up VMs? Veeam, right? Our customers that are on-prem, that are using Veeam as a solution, have a ton of different capabilities to do backup and disaster recovery in a pay-per-use model that really, help them adopt these constructs that I was talking about earlier quickly and easily. And then for modern SaaS applications, we have managed backup products that take that load off your hands, that allow you to just say, hey, look, back up my SharePoint data, back up my OneDrive data, back up my Teams data, take all that off my hands for backup for Office 365, and we will handle that for you, store the data, and help you with recovery. So together, we have an amazing solution, right? You get to pay for what you use, 24/7 support, super fast cloud adoption, and quick data recovery if you're using our disaster recovery and backup solutions, and a ton of redundancy and region availability. We're replicating data as you need, and we make all of these solutions available to our customers for a really quick and easy adoption for their business. So if you want to get in touch, I'm going to put some details on the next slide. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this great Actual Tech Media Gorilla Guide webisode on securing cloud environments. I hope everyone has a great day.
All right, great. Thanks, William. And just leave that up there for a second if you want to grab his email address or any of that contact info. And then we will move on to our poll about additional information you might like to have about the Phoenix NAP solution. So really interesting stuff there from William about some of the cloud security things that can be this cloud security issues that can be addressed with a Phoenix NAP solution, and interesting bits about the Veeam partnership, and good stuff. So if you want to get a data sheet or technical white paper or any of those other elements, please just click in there in the poll, and Phoenix NAP will be reaching out to you on those. I'll just leave that there for a few more seconds. Okay, and let's move on to our next session of the day. We have Security Scorecard. So we have Matthew Anselin, who's Director of Sales Engineering for Security Scorecard, and he's going to tell us about it. Matthew, take it away.
My name's Matthew Anselin. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering over here at Security Scorecard. Today's topic around securing cloud environments, I thought I would provide my spin on that notion, and added the bit, securing cloud environments, especially when they aren't necessarily yours, and that can be a real challenge. And so we'll get into that using the tools and services that Security Scorecard provides. Looking at Security Scorecard overall, we're products and services that are primarily looked at for use with third-party ratings, with vendor risk management, supply chain risk management. Certainly, number 2 use case most popular would be to look at yourself, though, as well. And this is going to be the topic area that we touch on today, and how you can use our tools to discover various cloud environments as well as other assets that might be under your control, but not necessarily under your watch even. But as a whole, Security Scorecard offers a suite of products and services to help folks with those primary use cases, including the ratings platform, Atlas, which is our questionnaire processing module. We have bulk data services for those who need to ingest that, our integrations, and then of course our managed services, outsourced third-party risk management services, assessment services, and the like. But today we're focused on cloud environments, and what I want to point out just to begin with is that really your cloud environments, if we're talking about infrastructure as a service here, it's really just another part of your third-party vendor base. Because in our view of what is your third-party vendor base, it's not just the outsourced HR provider, it's not just the payroll website that everyone uses at the company. It could be the equipment maintenance VPN tunnels that come back into your environment. It could be the partners that you've got open IPsec tunnels with, sharing data with. And of course, third-party vendors include your raw materials and parts suppliers, especially if you're in the manufacturing sector, which can lead you to a notion of thinking of any third party outside of yourself, where if they were to suffer some sort of a cyber event, would you be impacted significantly? Would your production stop, or would you be bleeding cash as long as they're struggling on their end? Or exposed to undue risk of cyber attack or supply chain attack. through those conduits, those connections that you have with these third parties. Well, when you think about cloud-based web services, those are just another form of third party that you're entrusting with your data. So how do you know that these third parties are being good stewards of your data? And certainly there's a lot of process and procedure that has grown over the years to determine that. But today we're going to show you exactly what we can do to help illuminate that and give you visibility into the ongoing security posture and hygiene of these third parties, including cloud web hosting services. And when you think of the security responsibility that you have in a pure IaaS play, there is that shared security model, which is to say physical security is what the AWSs and Azures of the world will provide you, the uptime, the machine level security, but then the logical security, the application level security, that all rests with you. And so it is an important fact to think first and foremost that you know where all these assets are. So today I'd like to take a look at a scorecard and help you to understand how we discover assets across not just a given cloud provider such as AWS, right? AWS has a similar function, don't they? They've got their asset sync dynamic discovery tool that you can patch into your vulnerability management tools, that you can patch into your SIM tools to help discover inside of a single IaaS. But in our world, we use a completely external third-party approach to gathering those assets that I want to share with you this morning. So what I've got on the screen here is a sample scorecard. This is Halliburton. We've given them a C, their average amongst their weight class or amongst their peer group. And that means amongst other companies that are similarly sized from a digital footprint standpoint. So we've got 4.26 million IPs we're tracking for Halliburton. We've got 390 separate domains across that, and these locations span the globe, as you can see. The way we're collecting this information is critical, I think, because in fact it lends itself to the accuracy rates, right? To the reduction of false positives. But what we're doing is we're touching every single IP across the IPv4 space daily. And what we're looking for are signs, forms of evidence that a particular organization operates there. So that could be SSL certificates on servers. That could be DNS records and pointers and the tree information that we can get there. And then there's also, whois records and other forms of information that we can supplement. But these evidence forms become how we're able to then attribute a given IP specifically to a given organization. And this is an interesting challenge to overcome because especially in the cloud services, those IPs can change very rapidly. So we've developed some proprietary methods that we use that involve many cases in touching the IPs more than once a day, but every couple hours to confirm over a sequence period of sample sets that in fact our evidence still remains clean and cut to the particular vendor in question. So things like shared gateways, we need to be cautious of. And over the time, we've done a great job building out the attribution process such that it can discern from those massively shared IPs, those application gateway head-end IPs that might be shared by hundreds or thousands of companies versus the ones that are in fact sole responsibility of a given company. And that's the basis for how a scorecard is built, because it's upon these IPs and domains that we are then looking for issues or exposures, vulnerabilities, problems, things that might need your attention. And so if I look here, I've sorted the digital footprint of 4.26 million IPs for Halliburton to find where the greatest areas of impact are. Like, where are the issues that we're locating? And one particular IP jumps out as having the most varied number of types of problems and the most line itemed findings themselves. And that's something that we can drill into further to get that information. You know, how do we know this is their IP? We found an SSL cert here with their name. But you get clues in that. As the internal dev staff, you get clues to what this machine might be. Dev edge, okay, maybe this is a development environment, and this is the edge of their test server base. And, you know, for some reason, it has not had the same levels of security and scrutiny placed on it that maybe it should. You know, what kinds of problems are we seeing, though? Things like database exposures, certificate weaknesses, cryptological problems, missing patches, certificates without revocation control. So a handful of problems that make this either an intentional honeypot, which it might be, or just a server that's been neglected, and that could be the weak link in the chain in your cloud environment that you need to remediate, and remediate quickly. So that's the nature of how Security Scorecard goes about, you know, finding these assets, tying these assets then to specific issues and problems, such as this exposed database that we have here, as well as then formulating a way for folks to actually go through and remediate those problems. Okay, so that's how we close the loop on it, is when a company uses our data, or whether they're using our data or not, you know, if a company was to go and fix this problem, right, they take down this database, they put it behind a firewall, it's no longer directly visible to the internet, because all of our findings are purely outside in. We're like a hacker's eye view into the organization, doing this process of outside in collection, non-intrusive public signal collection to gather this information. So we can see this. That means every hacker in the world can see this, as well as every white hat. And so what do? So you put this behind the typical stack that you would, right? Security, maybe web servers first, application servers next, and then the database itself, instead of having a database directly exposed to the internet. Okay, so if you do this and don't tell us about it, well, certainly here it is, October 26th. It looks like we're going to touch this IP again, or collect for this database anytime now. Once this updates, then it would naturally decay off the scorecard. And that's how the scoring system naturally prunes itself over time and makes sure that there's the most accurate and current findings. But we also give folks an opportunity to, in fact, tell us that they fixed it, so that they can get this removed faster, so that you can get a score improvement faster. And this remediation process becomes, in fact, a workflow when you apply that same notion to possibly third parties that you're trying to trust with your data, but have a few concerns about some of their security practices. You might suggest a few things that they fix, and then have that come back around to a point of completion to make them a better steward of the data that you're trusting them with. So by informing Security Scorecard that this has been resolved, this goes into our tech support organization, who will manually verify that this is no longer seen, and that happens within a day. Then in the next couple days, it disappears off the scorecard, the score goes up, and everyone's happy. So that history of things being fixed is kept in the event log, so that there is a track record for that remediation of those exposures. And this can be applied both to an internal notion of watching you, yourself, your subsidiaries, your divisions, for the existence of new assets popping up, but also watch them for the notion of problems being fixed across that environment. We give you that access to see that event log, so that you can watch that remediation, and you can even watch that remediation occur across your entire vendor base with folks that you might have shared this data with. This is able to be done as well. So it's a full flow workflow here that's discover the assets, tie those assets to the exposures and issues and vulnerabilities, the problems themselves, and then track the remediation, the repair, the patching, the correction of those issues to come full cycle. And that's really what we do when it comes to this notion of protecting cloud environments. So then at this time, I do want to let you know that we believe that every one of our scored entities has the right to access their own scorecard for free. So we urge you today to just reach out personally to myself so that I might set up your free access if you don't already have it. We might find that someone else at your same organization has already opened up free access, and we simply need to add you as a user. But you will be able to see your own scorecard, permanently, unredacted, free access to your own scorecard. So shoot me an email, and we can get that set up for you post haste. I appreciate you spending the time today with us to learn about securing cloud environments.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew, for that really interesting presentation. And that's m.anselin at securityscorecard.io is the email if you want to go ahead and get that access to data for your organization. Also, if you could fill out our poll here as far as what additional information you'd like about the Security Scorecard solution. And while you're filling that in, I just have to say it was a really thought-provoking diagram of how many cloud connections we all have aside from the big cloud providers that we think of. We think of AWS and Microsoft Azure and GCP, but almost everybody is a cloud connection. In our supply chain. I think you had a law firm on there, and almost anybody. And security scorecard is a really interesting approach to verifying that your supply chain is as secure as it can be, and your all your partners. Okay. So for our next portion, we're going to bring back David Davis to moderate a Q&A panel. So let me turn things over to David.
I'm excited now to bring back our expert panelists. Welcome back, Steve Riley of Palo Alto, Kim Lambert of Rubric, Tony Golding of Thycotic Centrify, William Bell of Phoenix Nap, and Matthew Anselin from Security Scorecard. The first question is for you, Stephen, at Palo Alto. What are you seeing today around Palo Alto customers doing microsegmentation?
Microsegmentation is a method of creating zones in data centers, and so it aligns very closely to how Nutanix works with its flow components. It also works in cloud environments to isolate workloads from one another and secure them individually. So this is important to every implementation of VPC, for example. Organizations use microsegmentation to reduce the network attack surface, and it also improves breach containment by not allowing traffic to flow across multiple segments.
Thanks, Stephen, for the details on microsegmentation. Now, the next question here is for you, Kim. They're asking, what does Rubric do in terms of protecting client clouds?
Okay, gotcha. All right, so our differentiation is less over individual features, but we're glad to obviously get into that with you. It's definitely more about unification across your on-prem, your cloud, your multi-cloud environments, and giving you that visibility across what can be a fragmented ecosystem. So with Rubric, we're giving you the ability to manage all this data regardless of where it lives now or where it'll live in the future. So think about where your teams are building now, what cloud or clouds they're using. You can quickly see how difficult and complex it can be to manage all the different environments for one, but more importantly, how difficult it can be to prove that this critical data is protected from ransomware, that you do have a strategy in place to be able to recover all of it and recover all of it quickly. So be able to know that it's not going to take weeks to recover from a backup, because in that time, you're going to lose new data that's being created. So you can do all this quickly. You can do it at a granular level that's not obstructive to operations.
Thank you for clarifying that, Kim. Let's see, the next question is for you, Tony, at Thycotic Centrify. You mentioned that without using clients, it would be challenging to implement a zero trust, least privilege security model. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I did. So as we discussed, Zero Trust relies on the ability to constrain admin rights to a minimum set, i.e. least privilege, and then to elevate privileges when necessary and approved. Now, there's essentially two approaches to this, and some Vault-only vendors are offering a clientless approach. But with no client footprint on the servers, then the typical approach is for the Vault to use a backdoor administrator account to log into the server and create a temporary administrator account for the user. The user then logs in with full privileges. Now, the problem with this is multifaceted. One is that the Vault is using a backdoor admin account to log into the server for every privilege elevation. So there's risk tied to the use of that superuser account. Another is that the Vault creates a temporary administrator account for the user to log in with. And that's increasing the attack surface, and it's also going against best practices such as zero standing privileges. A third is that it gives the admin full rights on the box, so it's not constraining access to only the task at hand. And frankly, that's kind of hard for the Vault to do because it doesn't have a client on the box to enforce any fine-grained access control policies. And then finally, from the server's perspective, it sees two administrative logins, one from the Vault and one from the user. But it doesn't know that. It has no way of telling friend from foe. It could be a cyber criminal using compromised credentials, but the server sees valid credentials and lets the users in. Now, all these are fully addressed with a client-based approach, right? There's no need for temporary local administrator accounts. The client does the privilege elevation. We can do fine-grained privilege elevation for the user. And the client, which is representing the server, essentially allows the server to protect itself and distinguish friend from foe. So yeah, with only a Vault and no host-level footprint, least privilege and privilege elevation in support of a zero trust model is a big challenge. You really do need both.
Thanks for clarifying that, Tony. Now let's move on, and my next question is for William Bell at Phoenix Nap. William, if there was just one thing that I could do to enhance my security and resiliency for my infrastructure and my cloud applications, what would you suggest?
I mean, I think that this was a really hard question for me to kind of come up with an answer to, because there's so many things that you should be doing to help protect your environment. Ultimately, I think, if you're not backing up your data in a secure and immutable way to make sure that that those backups cannot be destroyed and cannot be manipulated or overridden, I think if you only get to do one thing, I think that's the thing you have to do, right? Because you can focus on configuration compliance, you can focus on all kinds of other capabilities, but ultimately you need to have a clean copy of your data in the event something goes wrong.
Great answer, William. Thank you. Next question is for Matt at Security Scorecard. They're asking about the demo. They want to know, how accurate is that process you stepped us through?
Yeah, good question. So we've worked very hard to make it the most accurate, because honestly, inaccuracy in the discovery process is where false positives come from, period, in the third-party ratings industry. So it's been a huge area of focus for us over the years. We're getting to about 95 to 97% machine accuracy, and that is to say on IP and domain attribution right out of the gate. That's plus or minus. Certain organizations lend themselves to being more difficult to map, but oftentimes that's because they may have multiple business units under them. And if those business units operate under their own separate top-level domain, then what you'll find is we have individual scorecards for each of those business units, instead of coming out of the gate with those all on a single scorecard. But yeah, and the accuracy then to get it the rest of the way to 100%, that's where we accept attestation from the companies who own their own attribution. So that's part of what that call to action today was. We're asking you to, own your footprint. And what that means is at no charge to you, access to that discovery information on your own organization, as well as the chance to tell us if perhaps we've got old domains that have been divested, or new domains that somehow we missed, in that couple percent points of error.
Very nice. All right, Stephen, back to you at Palo Alto. They're asking, how does the zero trust model actually work, and how does it get implemented?
Sure. Zero trust security means that no one is trusted by default from inside or outside the network. And so verification is required from everyone trying to gain access to a resource on the network. This, as you can see, aligns very closely to how Nutanix implements its flow components. This added layer of security has been shown to prevent data breaches because it locks down one asset communicating to another. So if you use a Palo Alto Networks VM series to implement zero trust, then you'll be doing things such as identifying the protect surface. So in other words, identifying things that are flowing across the network to protect your environment. Mapping out the transaction flows, and you do this natively with Nutanix Flow. And then building out a zero trust architecture. Remember, zero trust is a model, it isn't an implementation. So the architecture would be based on segmentation. And then create the actual policies within inside the firewall to ensure that you're locking down your segmentation. And then it's a case of monitoring and maintaining that environment, which becomes easy if you're using the interfaces provided by Palo Alto and also by Nutanix.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Next question for you, Kim, at Rubric. They're asking, can you explain the benefits of using Rubric for Azure?
Yes, sure. So I mentioned Rubrik's partnership with Microsoft, and this is a big one, especially for our joint customers. So if you're using Azure today, or you're utilizing Microsoft 365 and it's become a tier 1 app for you in this, this day and age of remote work, Rubrik's partnership with Microsoft is a real benefit. So both of us can bring you best-in-class offerings, bring you capabilities that unify your data management, and then more importantly, provide you with a holistic approach to data security. So Rubrik can secure your Microsoft environments with this full data protection for your VMs running in Azure, plus storage volumes via Azure Managed Disks. And then, of course, protection for OneDrive, for Teams, for SharePoint data using Microsoft Azure storage. So like we talked about earlier, for Archival, your data is secure, it's immutable, it's air-gapped, it can't be accessed or encrypted by ransomware. And these capabilities across Rubrik and Microsoft follow security best practices throughout. So we utilize even a joint engineering and partner interlock with Microsoft when it comes to what we're building and what we're creating. So this actually means that we can deliver you even better solutions and support.
Now, back to you, Tony, at Thycotic Centrify. This person's asking, you mentioned auditing on the host in case the vault is circumvented. What did you mean by that exactly?
Yes, I did. Another reason why both a vault and a host-based privilege elevation capability is an essential part of a PAM solution. You really do need both. They both have their roles to play. But if you only had a vault, then, sure, you can capture administrative activities that occur within the vault portal UI, things like password checkouts and retrieving SSH keys and initiating remote login sessions. And you can also record login sessions. And that gives you a visual account of privileged activity on Windows and Linux boxes. Very useful to prove compliance as well as for instant response. But when you're being hacked by an external threat actor or a malicious insider, it's unlikely they're going to log into the vault to do all of their hacking. They're more likely to hit the servers directly, compromise a privileged account, and then use it to move laterally from server to server. And by doing that, they've bypassed or circumvented the vault completely, and the vault has no audit trail or visual record of it. So by having a client on the host, it can not only enforce login and privilege elevation and MFA policies, but it can also do the auditing and visual session recording. And that ensures you have that full visibility. And you can even feed those events in real time to a SIM solution, for example, to get alerting of suspicious activity taken care of.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony. Next question, back to you, William, at Phoenix Nap. They're asking, what features of the Data Security Cloud make it a security-focused and compliance-ready solution for my business?
So ultimately, I think that, if you're running VMware on-prem, it makes for the absolute easiest cloud adoption possible on earth, right? Point, click, replicate, adopt. right? And you can construct all the same networks, technologies, all the things you use on-prem. There's a solution for that in Data Security Cloud. There's a one-to-one mapping that allow you to really easily and quickly adopt Data Security Cloud. And then when you do that, you get, like I mentioned earlier, you get backups included, you get endpoint protection included, you get things like network microsegmentation and NSX included, and a ton of other operations management capabilities. It's feature packed, ready to go, no hidden fees, no pay per use. Oh, I used a lot of monitoring and therefore I'm going to get hit with a ton of fees. None of that, right? I think that makes it the right place for a lot of specifically SMBs and medium business as they look to adopt some type of cloud environment.
Great advice. Thank you, William. Matt, the next question's for you. They're asking, what if my company owns a bunch of brands or subsidiaries? Would your process catch that?
Yeah, so that kind of ties into the first question. Ultimately, if the company is operating under multiple top-level domains, think of like a big food manufacturer, and they've got all their different snack brands and their different websites for each and every one of them, if you want to think of it that way. But that's when those individual brands or subsidiaries would tend to be on their own scorecards. The good news is at the customer's request, at the owner of a given company's request, or the authorized parties there, right? Like typically a CISO or somebody will provide an attestation to us that says, yea, verily, we own all of these top level domains. Please roll them into our main scorecard to make what you might call kind of like a master scorecard that includes themselves plus all of their brands and subsidiaries. So that's an option that we leave open to the owners of that scorecard. Again, we feel like the company we're rating is who ultimately owns that.
Excellent. Thanks, Matthew. Next question back to you, Stephen, at Palo Alto. They're asking, how do you see your customers using Flow? Are they using it to replace physical firewalls?
We see Flow working directly with firewalls, but generally virtual environments. So Nutanix Flow delivers the advanced network security by providing kind of visibility into the virtual network. It's application centric from network and helps protect you from network threats and malware and ransomware. And it also does a certain level compliance monitoring. This aligns obviously with the VM series firewall and how Palo Alto Networks and Nutanix with both products work together to secure applications in the environment. So essentially, you are not necessarily replacing physical firewalls. In a data center, you may still need them in certain locations. But when you're doing a Nutanix deployment, and if your entire infrastructure is virtualized, then absolutely, there wouldn't be so much of a requirement around the physical firewalls, but using Nutanix Flow and VM series, especially in the VPC world that Nutanix has built, to manage and monitor traffic flow.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate that. Now back to you, Kim, at Rubrik. They want to know, if you have data retention, then why do you need backup?
It's a good question. So think about this, right? If a malicious threat actor gets access to your data, they can also change your retention schedules. So an attack vector for ransomware attacks. And these threat actors, once they do that, they can actually delete versions of data. So it's critical to have actual secure data backups with a solution that is protecting that lifeline for you.
Thanks, Kim. Now back to you, Tony, at Thycotic Centrify. They say, you mentioned centralizing PAM policy in a cloud solution. Is there an alternative?
So Thycotic Centrify offers two choices for unified policy management. And one of those harkens back to our early days when data centers and Microsoft Windows and Active Directory kind of dominated the enterprise IT landscape. Now today you can centrally manage PAM policies in the Centrify platform, as I discussed already, or in Active Directory. Now the AD route depends largely on whether you're an AD shop with a good mix of Windows, Linux, and Unix systems, and you prefer to manage your PAM policies across all of these systems centrally from AD versus a cloud platform. But either way, this combination of centralized policy definition and distributed client-based policy enforcement, it provides the same level of granular host-based access and privilege elevation controls down to the command level, as well as host-based DVR-like session recording.
Thank you, Tony. Now over to William at Phoenix Snap. This question, they're asking, do reliable backup and disaster recovery solutions make my business hack-proof and ransomware-proof? What's your take?
I hesitate to say proof because, nothing's 100% in this world, but ultimately, I think there's a high level of reasonable protection afforded by specifically an immutable or copy of your backups and some type of replication capability that allows you to play back in time the data that you've replicated to the right point prior to a compromise. Those two things together can produce huge levels of resiliency for any business. And I think that it's probably as close as you're ever going to get to being ransomware or hack proof, other than disconnecting all your machines from the internet. So I don't think anybody could do that these days. So we'll go with backups and disaster recovery.
Thank you, William. I appreciate that. And here's another question for Security Scorecard, Matt. They're asking, is your free offer just to get a report on myself?
Right, and it's not just a report. The free part, or the free version, if you will, is an actual login to our platform. That it won't be a static report that you get. It will be access to your live scorecard, which, by the way, updates once a day.
Excellent. Thank you so much to Matt, William, Tony, Kim, and Stephen. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience did as well. There's a lot of great questions still out here we don't have time to respond to here in the live session, but we are routing these over to our experts from Nutanix, Palo Alto, Rubric, Thycotic Centrify, Phoenix Snap, and Security Scorecard. With that, let's go ahead and wrap up the event.
All right, great. Thank you, David. Great Q&A there with everybody. So we are at the phase of our event where we announce our grand prize winners. So we had 3 $100 Amazon gift cards. I should say we had 3 individual $100 Amazon gift cards. And I have the winners for those. So we have Sean Angus from Connecticut, Brian King from Oregon, and Scott Force from North Carolina. You are our winners. So Sean, Brian, and Scott, congratulations. Keep an eye out for an email from us. We'll be contacting you to get you your cards. So this has been a production in coordination with our Gorilla Guide series of educational technology books, and of course our new series of podcasts. We have the Kubernetes at the Edge and 5G Telco with Rupak Parikh from Platform 9. We have one on distributed Kubernetes and retail environments with Peter Frey from Platform 9. And our third Inside the Guide podcast episode is Distributed Clouds and Kubernetes as a Service with Suresh Raghuram from Platform 9. So please check those out. I think you'll find them interesting. And of course, we just have our series of books, the Gorilla Guides. Check those out if you get a chance. They're great technical resources. I have half a dozen on my bookshelf behind me that I look at all the time. Great resources. So that does it for today's event. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I'd like to thank Nutanix, Palo Alto Networks, Rubric, Thycotic Centrify, Phoenix Snap, and Security Scorecard for making this event possible. Thank you for attending this Gorilla Guide webisode, and we hope you have a great weekend.